Are all religions occults? Hey guys, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. Just jumping on to do another video. Um, this one's talking about, the topic of are religions occults? And are all of them occults? And basically, yes. And I know a lot of people may struggle with that because you are maybe erased into the religions from childhood, ingrained into it and taught that. So when you're in a scenario, kind of like the cave scenario, and I like to use that as a frame reference because when you're in the cave, you don't know anything else other than that. And so you don't see it from that point of view because you're in it, right? It's when you stand out of it that you can see it, which is much like your environment. Like when you are in a certain environment, you're in that environment. So you're ingrained into it, and so you don't see anything from a perspective outside of that environment until you step out of it. And so that's why a lot of times it's good to travel to see other perspectives. It's a great way and should leave your environment from time to time to get away from that, because even though we may not know it, whatever environment we're in, it becomes part of us. It's kind of like being a chameleon per se, like, because energy transfers and flows from one to the other, and the experience of it is playing out. And a lot of times, like what they say, if you're hanging out with certain people, you may end up doing what they're doing, and then it relates to, like, you can actually see it, like gangs, or people who live in poverty, they have the poverty mindset. And it's not until they have that change or something comes in to change it for them that they're able to step out of it, right? And so when you're in your environments, you're not really aware that's what it is, right? And for me, for my past lives, I've had lives, as a nun, as a Buddhist, as a high priestess, as many different things in the religious sectors. And that was part of my transformation in this lifetime, to start stepping out of that and transforming that and not being in it. But I always kind of felt and found myself still a part of that, because I went to colleges that were religious based. I went like Marywood. I went to Liberty. um, and that was part of my transformation, is stepping out of that. I went and lived in a Buddhist center for about five years. And yeah, it was just basically about ending all those cycles, because we're actually, with that, it has to do with the part that we're going into, for the future, that we're no longer needing that. It's the ending of the timelines of the religious factors, because they're about control, they're not about love. They're about oppression and separation, and keeping you from your correct direct connection, right, which is with source. You don't need anybody to go through. You can connect directly, and you're not a sinner. You're not being punished, and a lot of things that they teach and ingrain keeps you limited in a lower vibration energy. And that's part of the disconnect, because the further you go away from love, out of love, you're disconnecting yourself. You're not having that direct connection, right? And so the stream of consciousness is not always clear and correct, right? And so you're creating this space where you're becoming more of the illusion than in the direct connection. So you have your truths and then your false truths, right? And so they create this illusion of this false truth as they're separating you, and this is what you believe. And so if you accept that, then that's what you accept, right? And so they always are trying to change you and make you act a certain way, and they're always right and nobody else is right, and they create separation with themselves, right? And they put others against each other, and we can see that because of all the wars out there based in religion, right? And conviction and judgment and hurting and suffering. And a lot of religions have in the past tortured people just because they don't have their same belief systems. And as we're participating in these energies and vibrations of them, we're actually helping to keep that going. But as I said, we're coming into the ending of those timelines where we no longer need it because the vibration energy is raising. And so anything that isn't in alignment with it is going to surface and come up and then be shifted out. And a lot of people who are waking up are realizing, these certain things within those constructs that they're not in alignment with love, and they don't want them anymore and they don't need them anymore. Right? We don't need to go through somebody. We have our direct connection. And it's just taking that stance within yourself, right? So with that being said, are all religions a cult? Yes. Buddhism is. And honestly, I didn't realize that until actually I went and lived there. Because once you get into a certain level of studies and understanding, that's where it kind of starts, right? And it seems like everyone, when you first start out, oh, it looks good, and it looks, this resonates, and this is, and then, but then once you get into the deeper studies and understanding of it, they start getting into these practices and these things like that, which takes on a whole different concept, and it kind of takes you into a place where it's just creating something that um, isn't in alignment with love and source, right? And so they can be filled with demonization, doing certain practices, and then also domination, suffering. They're creating suffering because they're separating you from your true self, your own knowing, right? And the teachings, saying that you're evil, you're sin, you need to be punished, and you need to repent, and Source doesn't look at it that way. I've had a near-death experience. I've been on the other side, and it's not like that, right? And so these are all the constructs that are put here in this place to dominate the human concept and the reality that we're living in, and to create fear-based illusions and belief systems so that we cooperate and do what they're wanting you to do. And so from those belief systems, they all seem to be okay until you get into them on a deeper level, right? And then that what creates more of it. But they all want you to live and work in a certain way, and then they're better than another, and they're better than them. And so it creates this separation between everyone. You're either on my side or you're not, and then you're going to hell if you don't, And so it creates illusions, with your belief system. Many people may want to fight against that, but you only know what you know because you know it, and because you've been there in it and you're ingrained in it. You're in the cave. And so whenever we're suffering, it's a good indicator that you're separate and in an illusion, right? That's being created either by yourself by accepting false truths, or that they're putting out there for you. Now, religions and churches and those who are creating the belief systems, they do not have the rights to do that, and the only way they have the right is if you give it to them. You're giving your power away, basically, to be a part of their concepts, their reality, or how they want to teach it or believe in it or change and manipulate it. There was a time when all things were one and they all worked together and evolved, but over time they've been changed and transformed and manipulated to what is accepted and what isn't, to create this religion or belief system to act in an according way, to be a part of it, as and then to pass it down, for one person to marry another person, and then to have kids ingrained into it as they're growing up, so they keep it and perpetuate it and creating more of it. And that's part of evolution, actually, because it's like the seed planted, right? And then knowing that you plant a seed, and the more intention you put on it, it's going to grow and evolve. And that's the same thing, right? That's what they do. They put these belief systems out there, and then getting people to come to it, ingrain in it, and teach them these ways. Because maybe they feel empowered or separate, or not knowing the way, or forgotten themselves, or whatever the case may be, that they are feeling drawn into these places. And maybe it's just because you need some of the information that they do provide, which is okay. But don't be unempowered by it. Don't let it take you over, and don't let it dictate who you are, or creating an illusion that you have to go through somebody to be directly connected to source or to be saved, because you don't. You can do it through yourself. You have that within yourself to do that. You don't need to be saved because you already are. You're a part of source. You're a part of it all. You're not a sinner. You're not separate. And these are things, ingrainments that they put on you to believe, to make you to stay, to follow, to keep creating this and passing it on in your lineage, right? And so nobody's been giving you the right or the power over you, to be that for you, except for when you give it to them yourself, right? And so be brave. Step out of those constructs. Look and see for yourself. Don't just take it for somebody else's word. But it's been my experience, not just only in this lifetime, but past lifetimes, remembering my past lives, doing self-work, going and having a near-death experience, being on their side, now having that to bring in to share that experience, from that point of view. And then also from this lifetime, how that all works and evolves, right? And so our view is only from where it is that we are. And if that's all we know, and that's all we know. And so we don't think it is us, right? We think it's others. And unless we have the understanding that it is us and it's not others, that it's us who's reflecting it and being a part of it and experiencing it, that's bringing that reality to us to experience it, to be a part of it, that we're evolving through, then there's nothing that we can do, because if when you're in the experience, you're in the experience, you are it, you're part of it, you are where you are in the moment. But when you step out of the experience, you're in a different perspective and awareness of it. You can see from a different space, right? You can see like, oh, you get these aha moments, and it's like, okay, now that makes sense, right? And so to justify that, they don't want you to go to different places, and teach you that others are false teachings and preachings. Of course, they want you to stay there, and then to keep you there, you don't step outside of it, right? Because if you were to step outside, then you would see, you're seeing from the inside view out, or you're seeing from the outside view in, right? And so you can see from that perspective if you step out and leave that and go to somewhere else. And you can do that on all levels of your environment, whether you live in a toxic relationship or in a family, or if you're at a job that's toxic, your neighborhood, start going outside and leaving those areas, that space, that energy, and then look in from the outside view, right? It's kind of like yourself and then your higher self looking at it with a different perspective and view or source, because there's going to be different views. But if we're in our environment, we only know our environment, we only know that, right? And so of course we have that view from that. But if we're stepping out of it and able to see in it, we have a different view and we can understand it from a different perspective, right? But a lot of people fear stepping out because they don't know what's outside of their little box, which is very limiting, right? And so there's nothing wrong, going to learn about certain things and, exploring, but don't let it be a domination over you. They are all cults, and there's a reason that they are, right? When I was doing Buddhism, I didn't look at it as a cult until I stepped out of it. And then I was like, wait a minute, and things started clicking. And then when I was my past lives as a nun and things like that, I didn't think of it. It was my practice. It was who I was. It was where I was ingrained into it. I was fed that information and understanding of it. But the good thing is of it, even though I'm not part of it anymore, and as in who I am in my environment in this lifetime, I have the information. So it's good to, learn about different things, different ways, look at different religions and belief systems and how they relate, because they all do tie in at some point, but then they all kind of go off in certain things. So for like the meditation center that I lived at, they didn't practice yoga, but part of Buddhism is yoga. But I guess, depending on what stream, right? Because when I realized that they don't practice yoga, I'm like, why don't you? That's part of it, right? At least it was for me, because that was a past life thing that I knew coming into that. And so like they were like, no, they kind of looked down on it, and I'm like, and so they would tell you, you don't need to do that practice, you just need to do these practices, right? But why do you need to do those practices and not that practice, right? When others do that practice and that practice, or some do this and do, it's all a picking, right? They're all choosing what they want you to do and be and believe, right? So they all take away from it different parts and aspects of it, creating their own religion and belief system. There's many lineages of different belief systems out there, on different streams. But if you were to put them all together as one, because they've picked them apart, if you put them all together as one, you probably would have the whole perspective of everything. You know what I mean? And it's like piecing it all back together, because what's happened is they've all taken bits and pieces, all the different Catholic, Protestant, Methodists, Buddhism, you name it, all the other religions out there, they take bits and pieces of what was actually given to us from higher consciousness as a way of being. They've all taken and broken it all down to, okay, I'm going to only do this, and we're only going to teach this, and we're going to teach that, and we're going to teach this, and this is our way, and you either be with us or you don't, you go to hell. Right? And they teach that, you know, from different perspectives on all of them, right? And so that's religion, but they're all cults, because they only want you to be with them and be and practice them and be against another, right? Which is not love in itself, right? And so they are all cults. They all practice the same thing, different ways. And you can dive into it and look that up and do some research on it for yourself. I've been raised as a Protestant, for a little bit. At least that's what I was baptized as. And then learned about a little bit of Methodist, and then I learned about Catholic, and then because I got married, and then going in back into Buddhism after the awakening. But it's important to have all the aspects and understanding information about what you're doing and where you're going and why you're doing it, and for the reason that you're doing it. You know, just take a look at it and don't let it be dominated but subjective. You know, if you're needing some information, you're being called to go there, maybe it's because you need to learn something that they're actually offering. But it doesn't make who you are, it doesn't make it true, doesn't make it evolve through evolution to who you're going to be. It's just a part of the evolution and the journey, right? You may need that information for you to evolve, right? So it's not a lifetime thing, and because our lives end, right? And so there's no real truth per se in religions, as they're all cults. Just depends on which one you're choosing, and so there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying that's been my experience, stepping away from all that and having the awakening, the near-death experience, and then being able to see how it all plays a part in the role, right? Because I've learned a lot from them, you know, and got a lot of information as a part of being in that environment that I needed on my path, right? Because of course, like when I had my near-death experience with the angel, first thing that came to me was a person who taught me to meditate, right? And so meditation goes back to, you know, Buddhism, India. And then the next thing that came was a person who was actually trained in India to teach yoga. And so yoga was next on the path, right? And so from there was psychic abilities, awakening, doing healthy behaviors, you know, detoxing. So it was a progression. And so we need all this, right? We need all the information, but it's not a true state of being. And so it doesn't denote who you are or your makeup. It's just the information that you're taking, that you're needing, that you're seeking, that comes to you through them if you're guided to go there. And it doesn't make it right or wrong. It just makes it what it is. And so if that is your calling to go and be a part of it and to experience it and to learn from it, then that is for you. But it's not always for everybody. And so we shouldn't be against each other because nobody's choosing that, or they don't want to choose what you're choosing. Nobody has to be or do or whatever it is that you want. Right? It's for you. It's your journey. Everybody has their own journey. I know it's been my journey, my path in understanding all this, and that's been the path, and where I am now is totally different, right? And so stepping out of all of that, and going more into just my direct connection with Source. I don't need anything between me and Source. I'm at that point where I have evolved through all that, and anything that I need or want, if I turn in and meditate, then I receive the information that I need. I don't need to go to anybody outside of myself or any religions or any belief systems. In fact, when I had my near-death experience, I surrendered my life of what I believed it was, the illusion of myself, of who I was, that I was trying to be. I surrendered that. I didn't go to Jesus and be like, save me, or go to some religion or some, church to renounce my sinful life. I surrendered my life to Source directly, and I had the near-death experience. So that is proof right there that you don't need any intermediates, area. I can't even say the word, but anyway, intermediate. You know what I mean. Anyone in between you and Source, I'll just say it that way, to be awake or to go or to do or to understand. You can have it all. All you have to do is turn in and meditate and ask for the information, and it'll come to you, which is actually a quicker path than going around doing all this other stuff, trying to get all the information from other people so you can compile it and look at it, which kind of takes away from the experience of having the experience, but it's a long way around. Let's just say it that way. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. Are all religions a cult? Somebody had posed a question on that. So I wanted to answer that, but at the same time wanted to share that, part of my experience, my awakening and understanding. And so there's nothing wrong with meditating, doing yoga, healthy eating behaviors. It's all along the path, because as you're really truly on the path, everything falls away anyway, what you don't need, because you're raising your vibration, right? And so you're stepping out of the lower dimensions and realities of these belief systems that have been set forth, because they're on a heavier, dense energy and vibration level anyway. And as you're raising your vibration, stepping out of that, healing yourself, transforming yourself, doing meditation, and building your connection directly with Source again, taking things out of the way that you allowed to be in the way, you're allowing all that stuff to fade away, if that makes sense. And so you're allowing the direct connection to be rebuilt up against with yourself for true love. And that's been the way it's been for eons. And when we put things in our way, we keep the divine connection and love from coming from heaven to earth, right? And so the more we do that, we keep ourselves disconnected from love and the truth. And that's why we are where we are at this moment. And it's coming back around, which is also why we are where we are in the moment of the Great Awakening, right? Is bringing back our power, finding our own true selves, our divine connection within ourselves, and the higher connection in the realms. And you have a lot of people who are waking up now and taking that stand, walking away from things that are of the lower dimensions and realities, which are religions. They're all cults. Thanks for tuning in. Happy journeys. If you have any questions, drop them below. Have a great day.